And in three, two, one.
You are now listening to the Lapsed Graps podcast. Hello and welcome to the first ever episode 3 of Lapsed Graps, a podcast where I, Sam, a person who watches pro wrestling, sit down with my friend
Jam, who doesn't?
and we discuss the wacky week that was in professional wrestling. Now, before we get into the week of wrestling, we want to go over some botches from last week. Diamante and Ivelisse won the AEW Deadly Draw Tag Tournament, not Anna Jay and Ty Conti. That was on me. That was my bad. But to be fair, did anyone really watch that tournament? So, let's just be honest there. It was not exactly a big draw. But jumping over to SmackDown that occurred the Friday we uploaded the second episode, we had Lucha House Party defeating the current tag champions Cesaro and Shinsuke Nakamura in a non-title match after distraction from the Raw tag champions, the Street Profits, ahead of their champion versus champion match on Monday night. So instead of doing the split brands or just having everyone show up everywhere, what they're doing now is quarterly. The brand is allowed to send one performer or one team to the other show. So SmackDown, I guess, announced that their quarterly transfer for one show was going to be Cesaro and Shinsuke to face the Street Profits on Monday Night Raw. So the Profits showed up on Friday night to just kind of mess with them. It was a good segment. I was really, really excited for Lucha House Party. It seems like they're doing some big stuff with them, which we'll get into in the Outside the Ring segment. We had a couple of people posting some interesting things online, but it was good. It was a little weird and a little clunky with the whole, quarterly we send wrestlers wherever. In my mind, just either keep them completely separated or just do away with the brand split entirely and let them do whatever they want wherever they want. What
Is
about
this like
you, Jim?
the is this like the wild card rule all over again?
It's the wild card rule, but less so and also more so. Because the wild card rule, it was, if I remember right, one person from any brand could show up on the other brand that week, but it could only be one. And now it's there can only be one, but it can only be quarterly. But we'll see if they get rid of that immediately once the storyline needs someone from a different brand to show up somewhere else.
Okay, it sounds like the wild card rule, but wackier, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah, it's definitely, I think, intended to be a little more easily understood, and in trying to make it easily understood, they just made it worse.
Mm.
If I'm being honest, it's not great. But about that Lucha House Party match, what do you think about the LHP pulling a win over your current champions Cesaro and Shinsuke?
Oh mind it, I always really liked the Lucha House Party. They were those teams that put on really fun matches but never win. So if this is like a sign of a push for them, then hey, I'm all for it. Just they're super talented lucha guys, and I'm all for some good lucha.
Absolutely, absolutely. Good lucha is always a good thing to have.
Hmm.
Continuing on with SmackDown, we had Bayley coming to the ring to address her attack on Sasha last week, saying, I was using you. I never cared about you. I needed you to get my way. Thanks to you, I became Bayley Dos Straps. Thanks to you, I became the longest reigning SmackDown's women's champion in history. But after last week, I have no more use for you. So it looks like they're keeping Bayley heel and maybe moving to turning Sasha face as this feud goes on. What do you think about that promo, Jam? Did you have a chance to see that? Did you come across it on the timeline, anything like that?
I did see it though. I saw like a screenshot of what looked like she was in a chair. Was that the promo?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, it was definitely giving me some like Eddie Guerrero vibes from when he broke up with Rey Mysterio, and like when he
Hmm.
was had the mask in his hand, was in the chair in the middle of the ring, and like it seems like their feud kind of borrowing a lot of elements from, if not that feud, then just that whole era of wrestling where Mysterio versus Guerrero happened from. And the way they're going about it seems like it's coming really good just by going off what you told me. And I like the fact that Bailey is really leaning into something that everybody expected during the whole tease scenario of the feud, which is that Bailey's just using Sasha. So they're going to lean into that for the feud, and she's just bragging about how she not only used her but kicked her to the curb, and now she's out of action for who knows how long. Then I think that's a good heat for her.
Absolutely. And it's definitely a good way to get Sasha off TV while she gets ready for the press junkets, because she was revealed in the most recent trailer, which dropped on Tuesday, I believe. We're filming this on a Thursday. I believe it dropped on Tuesday, that she is the newest member of the Mandalorian cast on Disney Plus, and she looks dope in that show. It looks like she's not going to be portraying any like clear alien race. Like there were a lot of people arguing that she might be Ahsoka, but obviously Ahsoka is very clearly an alien, and Sasha just looked like Sasha. So I'm excited to see who her character is and where that goes, and it makes a lot more sense why she was gone the entire time after WrestleMania, if she was off in Marrakesh, like filming this show. It makes it a lot easier to digest and understand.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to see The Mandalorian, but I saw the trailer, and I didn't see The Mandalorian season one, but the season two trailer is kind of exciting to me. And on top of that, I'm just kind of like really just happy for Sasha. Like I think it's always cool to see WWE wrestlers just branch out into different things, movies, shows. You see how good did The Rock to just branch off into Hollywood, and hopefully that same type of luck shines on Sasha.
Absolutely. Continuing with SmackDown, we had Alexa Bliss, Nikki Cross, Tamina, and Lacey Evans competing in a fatal four-way match to earn the right to challenge Bayley for her title, which is 2 weeks from Sunday at Clash of Champions. So it was a really good match, really solid. There were two main points that occurred in the match that I wanted to cover with you. So at one point, Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross, former tag team champions, former tag partners, are outside. And Bliss goes in, and it looks like she's going to give Nikki a hug. And then she drops her down into the Sister Abigail, which is the signature move of the Fiend, who she's been having her own little run in with recently. So after she delivers the Sister Abigail to Nikki, like complete with the kiss to the forehead, she just stands straight up. Her eyes kind of glaze over, looking like she's in a trance of some sort, and she just walks out of the arena, separates herself from the match, gets counted out. She's no longer in the match. She just pops up, no expression, out of the arena. It's leading to something really, really cool, I hope. I hope they allow Bray and Alexa to really explore the depths that this storyline could take them to, and give them the place and the pacing that they need to tell a compelling story. And then the other thing from that match that I wanted to go over before we get your knee-jerk reactions is Nikki Cross ends up pinning Lacey Evans to earn the title shot. So you have Nikki Cross facing Bayley for her first, I think, WWE title, because she wasn't NXT Women's Champion at any point, I don't believe, at Clash of Champions in one of the bigger matches of the night. So that's going to be really cool. I feel really good, really happy for Nikki. She showed up on Talking Smack and was just losing her mind. She was so excited. I'm really, really happy for her. What is your knee-jerk reaction on that match?
Well, on Nikki getting Tower Shot, I think it's very good for her just because she's a very good competitor, good promo. But I feel like they've kind of gone to that well so many times. Bailey versus Nikki Cross. Like I remember they did a couple one-on-one pay-per-views. There was even a handicap pay-per-view match. It was her and Alexa versus Bailey, and they flip-flop when it was Nikki being heel and Bailey being face. Turned that feud with Bailey being heel, Nikki being face, and they've gone to that so many times. Just kind of like I don't know, repetitive, I guess. And it's hard to buy into thinking that Nikki is going to win if she's had so many shots against Bailey in like the last year or two.
Mm-hmm.
And if she loses again to Bailey, it kind of I feel like that might hurt her credibility.
Fair enough. Okay, so continuing on and speaking of Bray Wyatt and the Firefly Fun House, goodness gracious, we had a new puppet joining the fray on the Firefly Fun House. Pasquale, the persevering parrot, is meant to debut on the Fun House. Oh, it gets better, but he's dead. So Bray pulls out the hat box. He opens up. He says, "Pasquale, come out and say something like inspirational. Say something with perseverance." No response. He starts to get a little frustrated. You see the fire behind his eyes. He turns and just silence. Turns back to the camera. He goes, "Oh no, kids! I think I forgot to put holes in the box." And so it's like it's a dead moment. You think maybe something went wrong, and then the boss puppet, which is Vince McMahon with horns, comes in and appoints a special advisor to the Firefly Funhouse because it hasn't been getting the ratings that he wants, and that is Wobbly Walrus, which is a walrus puppet wearing Paul Heyman's suit and losing its hair. So you now have Wobbly Walrus, which is subtitled on the show because the way he speaks and the speed with which he speaks, you can't understand a word coming out of his mouth. It's all garbled and jarbled and everything. So it's all subtitles across the screen, and it's a spitting image for Paul Heyman. And it's Firefly Funhouse continues to be my favorite thing on SmackDown every week.
That's actually hilarious. Firefly Funhouse was always like one of the better things they've been doing over the last year, 2 years, however they've been doing it, and
I think
it's
it's been
really
about 2 years since his re-debut.
yeah, it's really surprising me that he hasn't like missed a beat yet. Cause just like hearing that without even seeing it, it just sounds hilarious. And like Firefly Funhouse was always hilarious, but there was always that dark anecdote that just gave weight to just elevating the Fiend storylines to just heighten the drama of those storylines. And for them to do that balance always really impressive. And it seems like they're still just as good as when he first debuted it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think the beauty of it is that it's not an every week segment. So it does kind of just show up when he wants it to, when he has something he wants to say and when he has something that's worthy of the segment. Like it's not he's being told to, do something different every week. He's kind of given the creative freedom to just do what he wants when he wants it. And as long as it keeps drawing ratings, they're going to stay out of his way. So I really like it. In the main event of the evening, we had Sheamus and King Corbin teaming up against Jey Uso and Roman Reigns ahead of their match at Clash of Champions. So Sheamus and King Corbin come down to the ring first. They do their whole entrance, and then Jay is in the middle of his entrance when Sheamus and Corbin kind of bum rush the stage and just beat him down. Just beat the holy hell out of him. They bring him down to the ring, throw him in. The bell is rung again without Roman at ringside. I don't know who they've got as their timekeeper right now, but he really doesn't understand wrestling. If it's a tag match, everyone in the tag match has to be at ringside before it'll start. Hopefully, Paul Heyman will come out with some sort of like weird contract clause that he's got for Roman where he doesn't have to be there for the match to be started, and that'll all be explained away. But I personally hate that part of it right now. So they're just beating on Jey Uso. He's starting to make a comeback. He's fighting it back. It's a big, like, rousing moment for him. And then Roman's music hits. He comes down, blind tags Jay, spears King Corbin, pins him for the win, and then gets up and leaves. He wrestles for a total of 30 seconds for the first time on SmackDown since before the pandemic, picks up the victory, and then leaves.
So I've got questions.
Yeah, I figured you would.
Question number one. Is Roman not a heel anymore? Are they doing the tweener thing
Roman
again?
is a heel. He is a bad guy, and he is very clearly a bad guy when you watch the show because it's Jay all eager and excited to work with his cousin, and Roman is just kind of there. Roman's just sort of hanging out and like, yeah, okay, fine. I need something to do tonight. I guess I might show up. And like literally waits until the last possible second to make sure he keeps his ledger clean, shows up, gets the victory, and then dips. There's no like celebrating. There's no holding up of the arm or anything like that. It's all very, I'm here for myself. I'm here to protect myself and to get myself over and screw the rest of y'all.
Okay, that kind of answers was going to be my second question. Then I was going to ask, are him and Jay like feuding, or is it just like
Oh, they're
we're having a
absolutely.
match?
I don't think they're feuding. Jay doesn't know they're feuding, if that makes
Ah, okay.
sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Jay looks at it as like, oh, I get to wrestle my cousin. Isn't this so
Mm,
cool, guys?
right.
And Roman's like, no, I will destroy you.
Mm,
You want to take my title? I will kill you. And I will do it with a smile on my face. And so he's very intense. And then you've got Jay, happy go lucky, just happy to be there, Jay. And it's a really interesting, like, dynamic split where it is like it's almost like back to the face paint Usos Jay
mm.
with how just like eager and excitable and like pure like white bread baby face he's being in this feud, and then Roman is just like you are worth less than the scum on the bottom of my shoe kind of a guy. It's a really interesting uh dynamic that I don't know if it would work as well as it does if these guys hadn't known each other since childhood.
See, I actually like that. It's like picturing it in my head and like understanding that he didn't really turn heel until like the week before Payback or wherever Payback was. This is basically like his first feud since turning, right?
Yeah. So
Okay.
he turned heel effectively when Paul Heyman showed up on the SmackDown before Payback to say that it wasn't a prediction, it was a spoiler, that he
Hmm.
was going to win the Universal title. And then Payback was the ultimate heel turn for him, where he just didn't show up to the ring, showed up, spear, 1, 2, 3, done. And that seems to be the format that they're taking with his matches is he's in a situation where he doesn't have to be there for the match to start. He lets it play out. He picks his moment. He comes in, he spears him, he wins what he needs to win, and then he dips.
Okay, in that case, this feud kind of makes perfect sense for him to be a heel because he hasn't really established that heel character from the sounds of it. Like, and if he has, then like everybody may see him as a heel, but Jey Uso, he just kind of sees him as like his cousin, basically. Like,
Mm-hmm.
he's just looking at it as like, oh, I get to wrestle my cousin. We used to play wrestle as kids. Now we get to actually wrestle for a big belt. This is a dream come true. And Roman is just kind of this lumbering stare, from what I understand, and he's just caring about his title. He will kill
Mm-hmm.
his cousin to retain this title. So, and I think that and I guess this is my prediction, or maybe it's a spoiler for what's going to happen in the next pay per view, but if he just destroys Jey Uso unmercifully, then that's the perfect way to establish I am a heel character. I do not care who you are, family or otherwise. I will destroy you to keep my belt. I think that's really smart, I think. And even what they're doing now with this whole him only wrestling like 30 seconds and leaving. Because I saw the T-shirt he's got, the wreck
Wreck
everybody and leave.
everyone and leave. Yeah.
Yeah, and I always felt like that was always like Roman's like specialty, I guess. Like even when he was at his most hated by the fans, fans would cheer him a whole. If he would just clean house and then leave, people would just love him and just they'll turn around on him basically. On one, you've got if people want to cheer him, then you actually get to see what he does best, just wreck everybody and leave. And two, if you want to see more Roman, if all he does is wreck everybody and leave, do this whole basically his version of Cena wins LOL,
Mm-hmm.
then people just hate it. And you're like, oh, I want to see this guy wrestle more. Now I'm annoyed. So I think it's smart booking from the sounds of it.
Yeah, no, definitely. And this is a weird time for this kind of thing because there's no real crowd noise. Like you've got the piped in stuff with the booing and you've got the people on the Thunderdome that are doing the thumbs down and everything, but we found out recently that that was all kind of choreographed. Like they are told when to do thumbs down, when to cheer, when to get animated and like big about it. So we won't know how his heel turn is really working until we get fans back in that arena. Because as much as people say, well, if you don't know how fans are reacting, look at the internet. A lot of people really like to hate Roman. They really like to just say that what he's doing is garbage and he's not a good wrestler and he's not very good at his job and all this kind of stuff. And that died down a little bit after he announced his diagnosis, but there's still a pretty large faction of the internet wrestling community that just loves to take the piss out of the guy. So I don't think we'll know how well it's working until we get him in an arena with people, but in my mind it's working really well so far. But so that was all for SmackDown this week. Going over to Talking Smack real quick, we had The Miz and Morrison, who have spent the last several weeks stealing Otis's Money in the Bank briefcase and trying to steal that contract because apparently Miz knows a lawyer that once you get him the contract, he'll find a loophole and then it'll become Morrison's Money in the Bank contract. And Otis has been outsmarting them. Yeah, it's weird. Oh, just wait, it gets worse.
Okay.
Otis has been outsmarting them both. First by carrying his Money in the Bank contract not in the briefcase, but in a Money in the Bank briefcase painted lunchbox. Then by having that lunchbox inside of the Money in the Bank briefcase, so that when they stole the lunchbox, it was in the briefcase. And then most recently by having it in the briefcase in a lunchbox, but it was a duplicate briefcase. It's really weird and really convoluted, and really it makes Miz and Morrison look a lot worse than it makes Otis look good. But Miz, back to Talking Smack, shows up on Talking Smack to announce that he has pulled some strings with his great and immense influence in the company, and has had Mandy Rose traded to Monday Night Raw so that Otis won't be distracted on SmackDown anymore, because Miz and Morrison are just trying to make him the best performer he can be and give him the time to just focus on the fact that he's the Money in the Bank contract holder. So his girlfriend is gone over on Raw, and they're just trying to mess with his head to get their hands on this contract. I don't know where it's going. The only way this could work out well in my mind is Miz and Morrison get their hands on some titles and then Otis uses it to cash in, but I don't think the Money in the Bank can be cashed in on a tag team title. So you would have to have Miz or Morrison be either the Universal title holder, or on SmackDown it's the IC title. So I'm not sure where this is going. And if they end up cashing in the Money in the Bank on the IC title, doesn't that just dilute the Money in the Bank? It's a whole lot of weird, and I don't even think that WWE knows where this story is going. But Miz is good and is able to sell this kind of stuff. What do you think?
I think that was a lot,
Yeah.
and I'm very confused. Is it at least easier to understand, like when you see it?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Not
So
at all.
at least I'm with
'Cause
everybody else
it's
being lost then.
Yeah, because it's Miz and Morrison. They steal the briefcase. They start celebrating like now they're the contract holders. Morrison will bring up, well, it's still his contract, and Miz will say something like, well, I have a lawyer that'll find us a loophole, and if you have him hand him a piece of paper, he'll make sure that your name is on that piece of paper and all this kind of stuff. And then it turns out, oh no, it's the sandwich from Otis's lunch, or it's half a pudding cup. And then there's this weird thing where Miz always wants to try the food that he finds in the briefcase or the lunchbox. It's really odd. Like last week, he almost ate a pudding cup before Miz took it away from him that he found in the briefcase. The week before, it was half of a bologna sandwich that he almost ate. It's comedy for comedy's sake, but it's not comedy that works.
So is John Morrison like basically like his, I don't even know what you call it, just I guess his dumb comedy sidekick now?
John Morrison is he's how do I put this kindly? He's like the John Morrison from 2005 suffered a brain injury and they felt bad, so they brought him back. He's not He's not good. He's not like he's very talented in the ring. He's very skilled when he wants to go. The closest I can think of is for like an analog of how John Morrison acts is Orange Cassidy, but doing too much with it. It feels like to me because it's the jacket and the glasses and the like I'm too good to care, but also I have to be funny so we don't and like do comedy stuff so that we don't get called out for me being too close to an AEW product. It really feels like McMahon saw Orange Cassidy in the Battle Royal like last year where he didn't know how to put a ladder up and was like, Morrison can do that. He was in movies and just sort of told him to go be funny and awkward. And it's not working for me.
Yeah, it just sounds just really bad, man. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, no, it definitely does, and that might just be because it is. So jumping into Raw from Monday, the show opens with Drew McIntyre, the current WWE champion, in the ring cutting a promo. He states that his jaw really is broken, but it's a displaced fracture, so the bone is broken, but it's still compressed. The muscles in his jaw are still tight enough that the bone is compressed. There's been no shift, there's been nothing there that's going to cause him enough discomfort that he shouldn't be able to perform at Clash of Champions. He'll still be there. Uh, so he ends up talking directly to Randy Orton through the promo and says, I've left Raw in an ambulance. You left Raw in an ambulance because he put him in an ambulance last week. And he proposes an ambulance match at Clash of Champions. Cool promo, really solid, a little weird pacing wise, just because it seemed like it was supposed to be a Randy Orton promo that they ended up giving to Drew, like even down to the Photoshop spot that Randy was doing a while ago of saying, these are all the big, impressive legends I've booted in the face with the Photoshop of them all in a hospital ward. We get another Photoshopped image there. And then Adam Pearce, who's kind of the de facto Raw GM right now, he's just like an unnamed Raw official, interrupts that promo to basically admonish Drew for beating down Randy last week and to say that if Keith Lee beats him tonight, which is the main event, Keith Lee versus Drew, and Randy cannot compete in Clash of Champions, Keith will challenge for the championship. So Keith has to win and Randy has to not show for that to be a title opportunity for Keith. It's a lot of stipulations that gives them a lot of room to kind of wriggle out of it. So what do you think about this opening setup?
It kind of seems like they're doing a lot. Like I don't know if they're trying to like cover their tracks, like in case, like I don't know if Orton's like really injured. So like, oh, if he's super injured, then we can give it to Keith or something like that. Assuming that Keith even wins, was it because the main event's next week? You said.
No, it's this week's main event. We're just
Oh,
not there
okay.
yet.
Okay, got you. So
I will
it,
spoil this for you. You're not going to enjoy the main event.
I don't enjoy live wrestling. Let's be honest. So we'll
Yeah,
see.
no, that's fair. But the main event pissed me off, and it's going to piss you off.
Okay. So, but like piling like all these stipulations on, it sounds like they're just kind of doing too much, and it it sounds a little convoluted, and it might be hard for audience to follow. I'm worried.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I am too, because I found myself pausing and rewinding the promo and the Adam Pearce spot to be like, okay, so if Keith wins and Randy doesn't show, he gets the match. But
Mhm.
if Keith wins and Randy shows, it's still Randy's match, even though Adam had them fight here and da 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 da, and just trying to go through all the different iterations of what could happen. And it was really tough for me to follow, and I like to think I'm a fairly conscientious and maybe above average intelligence wrestling fan. So if it was tough for me to follow, how do you expect the 8-year-old that you're making this show for to understand, oh, this is what they're trying to do. Okay, I get that. I'm invested. I'm going to go steal mommy's credit card and buy the WWE network so I can watch this show.
Exactly.
Because at the end of
Also,
the, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna ask, like, why is Adam Pearce like the GM? Is he like officially the GM? Is he like a character, or is he just a random stagehand, basically?
He See, this is tough because it's another guy who doesn't show up often. He's just a dude that is legitimately an executive backstage, is legitimately someone that has a say in like what matches go on. He's not a producer, but he's someone that has a say in the production track of how things are done and things like that. I think he might be a second to Kevin Dunn. And he's just a guy in a suit that has decent mic skills and was willing to come out and talk on Thunderdome. From what I've been able to find, because I wasn't super close on following Raw before we started the show. He has really only appeared in the Thunderdome. I don't believe he's someone that was coming around when they were like outside of the Thunderdome. So it feels like it's just a way to move the story along with the Thunderdome, like restrictions on traveling and talent and things like that.
It sounds kind of weird just because it seems it's something I've noticed over the last few years, and like with them overdoing authority figure roles, when they got pushback from fans saying, "Oh, we're seeing too much of Triple H, we're seeing too much of Stephanie McMahon," there was a point, like I guess maybe 2018, 2017, they pushed back from that, basically saying that we're not going to have bosses on screen.
Mm-hmm.
So like they've always had to like tie around basically. Like you get these. It sounds like they've got these random, legitimate stereo execs who seem like they're basically just a wink and a nudge to the audience. Have they actually named Adam Page by name, or is he just a guy in a suit who comes out?
Not Adam Page. That's a performer over
Oh,
on
Adam Pierce. My bad.
yeah, on AEW. Uh So here's where things get a little weird. I don't know if they've named him by name on Raw. They could have named him on commentary, and I just didn't know. I know that his name is Adam Pierce because of Fightful and Wade Keller's pro wrestling podcast, and like people in the industry who are a lot closer to what's going on behind the scenes than you or I ever were or are at this time. So I know his name is Adam Pierce. I want to say that he was name dropped on Raw, but I can't say that with certainty right now. I can find out before the next recording, though.
Okay, but if it wasn't, then it seems like it's very much just like
Dude
a
in a
week
suit.
doing a suit to like the average fan, basically, to like
Mm.
to us who've either just know he's an executive producer or even indie wrestling fans who recognize him from his NWA championship days. It's just kind of like it's a wink and a nudge to people, to a very small percentage of people who are gonna get the reference, you know? Like if
Yeah.
to the average kid who's actually your audience or just the average fan, you're gonna be pointing at your screen like, who's that guy? Why is he giving orders? How does he have this match order? Is he a GM? It sounds like they're raising a bunch of questions without answering them because they're too afraid to dive right into bringing back authority figures.
Hmm. No, definitely. It's interesting. It's like a half step where it's like, okay, you don't want authority figures that you watched wrestle when you were a kid, and we understand that. So we're gonna bring back authority figures that the indie fans watched wrestle when they were kids, and that you WWE people, you don't know who that is, and that's fine, and all of that. And so I'm looking at his uh, Wikipedia right now, and it looks like he's been a credited producer on WWE Raw since 2013. Let's see. So it looks like his first official like appearance on the show as an authority figure was actually that episode of SmackDown where Roman made his heel turn and introduced Paul Heyman. He was the individual that McMahon ordered to get the signatures of Strowman, Reigns, and Bray Wyatt for that triple threat match at Payback. So when they were able to sign, it looks like he was kind of given that de facto you're in charge role over on Raw. So it's not been established, but he has been named on the television show, and he is like considered the authority figure. So Vince is still very much in charge, but he is kind of considered the on-screen right-hand man of Vince.
Okay, it's very very odd way to go about it, but Yeah.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. It's a weird way to establish him as a character. I love Adam Pearce, his work with the NWA from like I think he was their champion back like 2007 to 2008 was some of my favorite stuff. His early Ring of Honor stuff was really, really good. So I love the guy. It's just a little strange because it's one of those, oh, I know who you are, why are you here kind of moments. Because it took me a minute to remember that he was actually signed to WWE and he wasn't just in Florida and knew the wrestling business. So they brought him into Thunderdome to do a job, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so continuing on with the show, we have the Raw Tag Champions, Street Profits, facing off with the SmackDown Tag Champions, Shinsuke and Cesaro. This was set up earlier on SmackDown. The Street Profits win. It's a good match. It's not a great match. It's not the kind of match that you would expect from either of these teams. It's not like a 40-minute, high-flying, incredible piece of work. It's maybe 10, 11 minutes long. It was solid. It was nothing that I'm going to go back and be like, I really want to watch that match here in like a year or even a week. But it was entertaining. It was a good way to kill some time on TV.
Okay, that's good.
So you
I don't
now
really have the.
have the. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was gonna say I don't really have an opinion on it.
Yeah, the only real thing of note and the reason it ended up in the show notes is you've now had the SmackDown Tag Team Champions lose clean twice in a week, and they're going on to defend their titles at Clash of Champions. So you gotta assume they're about to drop those titles with as quickly and as often as they're losing clean and just not even like with any kind of underhandedness or shadiness, just being out wrestled. You got to think they're going to lose their titles, and maybe Shinsuke and Cesaro are going to go off and do their own singles thing. Maybe we'll see a reunion of the bar. I don't really know, but it seems like their time as tag champions is numbered.
Either that or WWE just hates tag teams again, and they're just looking at the show notes like, oh, who do we give a win last week? Let's give them
Yeah.
a win this week.
Yeah, no, I mean it's obvious that WWE hates tag teams. They just won't let good teams just be and do really cool, interesting things. But it's an interesting kind of thought experiment of like, well, if they're going to drop it at Clash of Champions, is there any real point in keeping them together? Because now that you have Sami Zayn back from being, kept on the shelf during the pandemic, but he's not working with these guys anymore. He's off doing his own thing, claiming that he never actually lost the IC title and trying to get a match for that at Clash of Champions. What is the point? Like, I don't think you can really slot those two guys back in to back him up without feeling like you're cheating the fans of something at this point.
Yeah, they always seem like a really odd mismatch to me. Like as a stable, it makes sense because collectively they're just a group of guys with a common goal, basically the artists I think they call themselves. But as a tag team, I can't imagine how that could work, especially without Sami Zayn, who is basically the mouthpiece who gave them character. If they're just on their own, then they're just a random team who are just random.
Yeah, and you can definitely tell that Sammy was the mouthpiece for a reason when they're giving their promos. Because Cesaro, God bless him, he's got his teeth back. You can understand what he's saying. He still stumbles over his words, and I understand that English is like his fifth language, and the same with Shinsuke. Like they are under no obligation to be able to speak English perfectly. It's a little tough to follow sometimes, especially when they get real excited and they start like not giving themselves time to speak. It can get real confusing really, really fast.
What's
The
funny
thing I
about
saw on, oh, go
oh
ahead.
my bad, go ahead.
I was going to say the thing I saw earlier in the week when all of this kind of started going on was that if there hadn't been a pandemic, they might have been the de facto like spearhead of retribution because they were three foreign guys brought into the company because of what they had done on the indies and wildly underutilized, and they felt like it was their time to join up together and make the name for themselves that they felt they should have had from the beginning, which I thought was an interesting way to do that. And they might end up tying it back in with Sami Zayn, who recently re-debuted. But personally, I would have preferred to see the three of them at the figurehead and not just Sammy, if that's where this is going to end up going.
Sammy, the figurehead of Retribution.
Yes.
Is that where they're like officially going with this, or is that just
No,
a
not at
theory?
all.
Okay.
That's where I hope they're going.
Mm.
Mostly because I want to watch Sammy wrestle in a mask again. I miss El Generico so much.
Yes.
I miss him so much.
Yes, the El Generico is, I think, he's got his orphanage now, so he's doing good. Though he wrestles very similar to Sami Zayn.
Yes, he is a very similar performer, but they are different people. Don't forget
Definitely.
that. Now,
Definitely.
speaking of Retribution, we actually had a Retribution promo that gave us a little bit of context for the stable, which was nice and sorely needed. So it turns out that Retribution, surprise, surprise, are all members of the Performance Center. We all kind of knew this. They've never addressed it directly on the television program, but now we have confirmation. We had the person that everyone kind of assumes is Dominic Dijakovic saying, "We thought our time in the Performance Center would give us wealth and fame. We see what you are, waste, byproduct. When you sell your soul to a corrupt machine, you too become corrupt. We refuse to suck up to an entitled regime. While you enjoy your last days before oblivion, we prepare to gut your reality. We are retribution." So it seems like they're taking this belief among the more dialed in wrestling fans that WWE was just signing up people for the sake of having them on payroll and sticking them on a roster rather than having them do impressive things outside of the company and running with it by saying, we were brought in with all these promises and all this like expectations of we're going to be able to do these incredible things, have these incredible dream matches, and we were underutilized. We were left on the shelf. We're not being used the way we want to be, so we're going to do it ourselves, which I think lends a really interesting wrinkle to the faction that wasn't there the whole time and makes it legitimately interesting. Because for a while it was, oh God, here comes Retribution to just break up another main event. Who cares? Let's just get it over with, get them out of the way so we can go on with the wrestling. But this way, with this kind of understanding and this ticking clock of like, enjoy your last days before oblivion as we prepare to gut your reality, you wonder what kind of drastic measures they're going to take to kind of change the reality in the landscape of WWE as they claim.
I think that adds a very interesting layer to what they're doing. It actually gives them a character and a mission statement that I think is really useful, because then it's not just people just randomly breaking up main events now. Like, now you actually kind of see the logic in it. It's basically like, oh, you didn't give us a chance to wrestle. We're not going to give your chosen ones a chance to wrestle. And I think that's really interesting. It makes you want to see more of these guys. If not, then at least see where this is going, at least.
Yeah, it's very early Nexus vibes before Nexus became NWA Wolf or NWO Wolfpack, where everyone was in the Nexus. It was very much like when we were underutilized, we haven't been used. We got tired of sitting back and catering. We're here. We're gonna wrestle and we're gonna run this crap. It's really cool. I hope they do it well. As much as I love a slow burn in wrestling, I need them to
Mm-hmm.
hit the gas just a little bit with this. It feels like we've had too many weeks of Retribution showing up, destroying a ring, and then disappearing for 3 weeks to have no kind of follow up on that story. To where I'm getting tired of it before it even really finds its legs. So hopefully they hit the gas a little bit and we start to see some real maneuvering on the side of Retribution.
Hopefully, though, there's one thing I'm kind of worried about now. Like, it's confirmed that they're gonna be NXT guys, Performance Center guys. So like, they're
Yeah,
all
PC, not
basically
necessarily NXT.
okay. PC then. So that still gives like the danger of just you debuting all of these possibly never before seen guys before, if not never before seen, then just underutilized guys and gals. And what's your game plan for when it's over, when everybody has a mask off, Retribution assumingly breaks up? You're you've defined these people by this group, these masks, and when all of it's gone and they're basically forced to fend on themselves as single stars, then what? Like it's gonna be
Then we
hard to
get
build
the
them up.
Fiend and we get the 3-man band. You
I
know?
hope so. I hope so.
Yeah. Hopefully, yeah. So, continuing on with Raw, we had a really, really good women's match for the women's title. We had Mickie James facing off against Asuka. And Asuka, near the end of the match, gets Mickie James in an Asuka lock that is sold so well that the referee ends the match prematurely because he thought that Mickie was unable to continue. She sold this thing like a dead fish, like she was just out, and it looked brutal. The referee ends the match. As soon as the match ends, Mickie kind of pops up and like does the face and like throws up the arms like, why are you stopping the match? Like, what happened? What's going on? But the match is done. It's over. After that match, we have Zelina Vega come out to the ring to confront Asuka and stake her claim for the Raw Women's title. If not at Clash of Champions, then soon. She wants a title shot. She's tired of being seen as just a manager. There was a lot of confusion online about this entire segment. We had a lot of people thinking that Mickie was legitimately hurt. We had a lot of people thinking that the ref screwed up. It ended up being confirmed later on that night by Brian Alvarez of the Wrestling Observer that the ref did screw up and Mickey's fine. There was no injury. That was supposed to be the eventual end of the match, but it was supposed to go on a lot longer, and we were supposed to see Mickie clearly tap to kind of set up the Zelina thing. That if, Asuka can tap out this legend, what is Zelina, who really has no like in-ring experience insofar as the WWE is concerned? What hope does she have? So it was prematurely done, but still a well done spot. What do you think?
I think introducing Zelina is interesting. Has she been wrestling lately, or has it all been manager stuff?
Not not since, I don't think ever since she got signed with WWE. Like I know she wrestled in the New York indie scene, up in New York, Connecticut, and New Jersey. I don't think she's had a televised match since signing with WWE because she was like immediately put with Andrade in NXT and had spots where she would help Andrade win with like a head scissors takeover or coup de grace or a sunset flip, and all these things that showed she knows what she's doing and showed that she's a talented in-ring performer. But she was more used for the fact that she is very skilled on the mic and could kind of lend a voice to this guy who was an incredibly talented wrestler, but was still learning English. So I know she can wrestle. People who know of her before she got to WWE know she can wrestle. Fans of just WWE have no reason to believe that she'll give Asuka any kind of a fight.
And that's what I think is interesting about her. Like, it's very much like she can definitely go in the ring. If you've seen her in TNA or on the Indies, like she can definitely go, or even just a few spots she's done with Andrade, she can go. But without her firmly establishing herself as a wrestler and just gunning for not only the championship but this, I guess, this juggernaut who supposedly nobody's ready for, that's that's an interesting direction. I wouldn't have predicted that even if I was watching regularly. I think they're trying different things. I don't know if that means they've ran out of challenges for Asuka and they're just throwing ideas at her wall. But
Hmm.
on paper, I think that could be a good match if they give them the time and space for it.
Yeah, no, I agree. It should be good. I worry that because she's not an established wrestler on the brand and she's quote unquote just a manager, it's going to be a squash and then she's going to be, stuck back on the shelf or back in the back in Alistair's little room waiting for her next little moment to do something interesting while Asuka moves on to her next thing. But hopefully they allow her to actually work and actually wrestle and it ends up being good. So we
Or
had Dom. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, or if they do the whole Jinder Mahal thing, only wrestles for like 2 weeks, gets a WWE Championship match, and then wins, they could do something wild like that.
They could. I think if anyone's gonna be able to pull off that kind of like self-important, like I know I'm good and you just learned I'm good, it's gonna be Zelina. She's just that talented. So continuing on with Raw, we had Dominic facing Seth Rollins again. This time it was in a steel cage. It led to some interesting spots. Seth ends up pinning Dominic in the middle of the cage and then attacks Murphy, who's at ringside, who he told to stay in the back, and expels him from their two-man faction. So he was a disciple. He told him to stay in the back, that he could handle it. Murphy comes out, gives him a kendo stick. Seth uses the kendo stick, and that's really where like the momentum turns in the match and allows Seth to win. He attacks Murphy outside, slamming him into the cage, throwing him into the barrier, doing all that heel stuff before like leaving in a huff and like basically just disbanding their two-man faction. It was interesting though because Ray, his daughter, and his wife were all at ringside for that match. Ray and his wife immediately rush into the cage to get Dominic up off the mat and to comfort him. Ray's daughter stops at the steel steps and like takes a moment and like touches Murphy's shoulder and whispers something to him, and like they hold on to it way too long on camera for her to be actually checking if he's okay. It's going to be a storyline point somewhere, hopefully, unless it just gets forgotten. But it looks like Murphy might be coming over to join the Mysterio family, which could be good, but probably not.
That there's a lot of strange right there. So Seth attacked him for helping him, and then when he
Yes.
successfully helps him, he just attacks him.
Yes. So Seth tells him in a like a pre-match like situation, hey, don't come out, stay here, do what I'm telling you. I've got this. He's clearly not got this when the match goes. Dominic is having his way with it. He's going up and down the cage. He almost escapes, gets pulled back down, almost escapes, gets pulled back down, and is, looking like he's just got to keep beating on him and he'll be able to get out eventually. Uh, Murphy comes down, grabs a kendo stick, puts it in the ring. Seth looks like he's going to yell at him, grabs the kendo stick, beats the holy hell out of Dominic, and goes on to win the match. And then, yeah, comes out of the cage, beats on Murphy, you know, punishes him for not obeying his word and his law, and then leaves alone.
Was this a punishment or was it just like a clear breakup?
It's hard to say with Seth because his character currently is very corporal punishment of like, I'm going to choke you and tell you what you need to do and I'm going to expect you to do better next time. But leaving alone and leaving Murphy kind of laid out there for the Mysterio family to try and comfort feels like a very clear, like, I'm doing this on my own, you can no longer be trusted kind of a thing.
Okay, it kind of sounds like just a swerve for the sake of a swerve and just another breakup for the sake of a breakup.
Yeah, no, I definitely feel that. It's weird. It'd be cool if they actually did something with it. I don't think they're going to, so for now it's just strange.
Yeah, hopefully there's more context to it, but that's all. It just sounds like, just in my head, just sounds really strange.
So continuing on with Raw and moving into this main event that you're gonna hate. So we have Drew and Keith Lee kind of facing off. The match gets started. They're laying each other out, big meaty blows, and then Retribution shows up. They show up, they enter the ring, they beat the holy hell out of Drew and Keith, leave them both laying in the center of the ring, and then the Hurt Business shows up. The Hurt Business, who has been kind of talking all this game, saying, you want Retribution taken care of, you leave it to us, we'll take care of it, we'll handle it, kind of puffing their chest out a little bit. They come down to the ring, they get their asses handed to them, and then Keith and Drew kind of leap out of the ring with like a suicide dive, lay out everybody on the side, and then the episode shuts. So we get no definitive end to the main event. We get a Retribution walk in. We get a sort of kind of maybe Hurt Business face turn, but not really. It was really weird and like disjointed. It felt like they were trying to merge three stories and make it seem like they had a plan the whole time when they really didn't. I didn't dig it. What do you think?
I honestly don't hate that because it's very much like you hate when a match doesn't get a finish like it's supposed to. I'd much rather they just not book the match opposed to just ending with just a screwy no contest.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're gonna do a no contest, melodying these storylines like this and presenting them in a way that's kind of interesting, I think it kind of works like this. Like the idea of the Hurt Business becoming this babyface stable, just bossing up and having just four on however many people on Retribution. I'm gonna just take a guess and say, I don't know, 10, 15, something like that. You got four
I think
people.
there's 7 on-air talents that are currently with Retribution. Like we know of 7 people. There are anywhere from 10 to 20, depending on how many people they need to put in a ring. But we know distinctly there's 7 people.
Okay, seven. That's still like four against seven. You got this heel
Mm-hmm.
stable that's outnumbered, and they're bossing up to say, okay, we're not afraid of you guys. We're not afraid of the odds. We're gonna just dive right in. I think that's really cool. Then you got Keith Lee and Drew McIntyre, who at their core they're still baby faces, but from the last couple of weeks they've had, I guess you can call it a friendly rivalry, from what I
Mm-hmm.
understand, over the title, and just over just, I guess, just trying to wonder who's better. And we talked about it last week. I think that's a big money match, and you don't want to give a big money match away on free TV. So if you're gonna have them, if you're gonna go a no contest route, at least have them clean house and do something fun that presents them both as equals. And I think that elevates Keith Lee at the end of the day too. So I don't hate this finish.
Fair enough. I just hated it because I had to sit through 3 hours of Raw to get to it.
Mm.
I think it's a lot more palatable when you're just listening to Raw kind of get blown through in its most interesting bits because there was a lot that I cut out, and you are better off for it. Let's just put it that way.
All right, that's fair.
Okay, so jumping over to AEW on Wednesday night, we had Hager and Jericho defeating Private Party. Hager and Jericho have kind of declared their intent to earn tag titles, which is strange to me because there's a legitimate tag team in that stable. But Hager and Jericho want tag titles, so by God, they're gonna earn tag titles, and they're starting on that path by defeating Private Party. It was a good match. It was a much longer match and Private Party came out looking a lot stronger than I thought they would, with Hager and Jericho kind of starting on this journey together. There's not much to say about this. It was a tag match. It was typical PWG, not much tags, a lot of weird high spot stuff, and Jericho did his best to not look too out of place.
Okay. Well, I can't say much about the match too much, obviously, because I haven't seen it, but just zeroing in on Hager and Jericho as a team going for tag titles. Like I said, that's super weird. Not even just because there's a tag team already in there, but Jericho was already kind of in his own tag team within that group. Like him and Sammy Guevara, they're calling
Hmm.
themselves, I
The
think,
Sex Gods.
Late Sex Gods, yes. So if Jericho wants to do a tag team thing, he could do it with Sammy Guevara, I assume. But
Hmm.
throwing in Hager in there, that's kind of, I don't know, it's a little random after him and Guevara tagged so many times.
Yeah, no, it's really odd. It might just have been because Hager and Jericho were the ones that were at TV for the Inner Circle and didn't have a match because Proud and Powerful were in the main event tonight. It I don't know. I didn't like it. I know a lot of people did like it just because Jericho is able to kind of put over anything he gets his hands on. It felt weird to me. I wasn't a big fan. Jumping back to the start of the show though, we had the Young Bucks come down while a match was getting started between uh, FTR and the Lucha not Luchasaurus, Jurassic Express. Jeez. And then they double super kicked the official. So they come down, double super kick the official, don't say a word to anyone in the ring, and go back up the ring as a new official comes out to take their place. And then as they're going back up the heel entrance, there's Tony Khan just kind of standing off in the corner, and I think it was Nick Jackson just pulls out like a wad of $100 bills and throws it at him and says that ought to cover it, as kind of a nod to the fact that they were kayfabe fined $5,000 each for kicking Alex Marvez in the face and stealing his soul with the heels of their boots. Uh, it's weird. They could have done a lot of really interesting things with the Young Bucks and made them detestable heels. Right now, it just sort of feels like the Young Bucks have a wrestling company and want to be the bad guys, so by God, they're the bad guys. There doesn't seem to be a lot of motivation and a lot of story behind why what's happening is happening, and it's just, I didn't enjoy it.
Yeah, it sounds very odd. Like as far as like the visual goes, I can see Young Bucks just walking around, doing whatever they want, super kicking whoever they want. That could be a really good story, but from the sounds of it, they're not even trying to have a story with it. It's just, tag team match, we're gonna super kick the referee. Unless there is an emerging story going on with that. Like, I'm not sure what the storyline could be. I feel like there's a connection if it's during a tag match, but I'm not sure what the story could. Maybe it's supposed to produce intrigue, and maybe there's gonna be a pattern in the coming weeks. But right now, it just comes off more weird than intriguing.
Yeah, my assumption is that the story they believe is clear, but is very, very not, is that they threw Adam Page out of the Elite. And then after they did that, Kenny and Adam Page ended up losing their tag titles to FTR and not to the Young Bucks. They beat the Young Bucks in what a lot of people consider to be the greatest tag match of all time. I didn't like it that much, but I'm also not the biggest Young Bucks guy. So there's probably a little bit of pent up frustration from not being able to beat Kenny and Hangman, and then FTR doing it, and just feeling like they should have been champions by now, which is all interesting. But with TV, you will have to tell us that that's what's going on. Like the amount of content that this company puts out on a weekly basis that it directly affects the TV show but is never referenced on the TV show. Like just to keep up with AEW, you've got Being the Elite, you've got Dark, you've got the Road to series, you've got Sammy's vlog, you've got all of these different little things. You've got the Twitch streams now with Miro and everybody. It's a lot of content to expect that your fans are keeping up with all of it and that you can just like willy-nilly pull stories from and know that people are going to keep an eye on and understand where you're going. It's real odd, and it speaks more to the fact that they were indie guys that were then told to produce a mass market TV show because, oh, who cares if you don't know what happened the last time we ran a show here? You know I'm the bad guy and you know he's the good guy, so you're going to boo me, and that's how that goes. But you have people, they're almost a year old now. They've almost done 52 weeks of television. That's not how TV wrestling works. There's history there. There's like people that know what's going on, and that happens in indie wrestling too. You have people that are familiar with the promotion and familiar with the wrestlers and know the deeper story, but it's not nearly as common as it is with like mass like cable television wrestling. So I think that's something that hopefully they get an adult in the room who can sit them down and say, look, this indie shit, this indie way of telling stories doesn't work on television, and you're going to alienate more people than you bring in by being those guys who do that one move that everyone loves.
100%. And I never really liked the idea that you have to keep up with so much different content just to understand a single, not even an episode of TV, but single segment in an episode. Like, I shouldn't have to keep up with every episode being the elite to understand why they're super kicking someone, or even I remember they had the tag team, Dustin Rhodes and I forget the other guy's name.
QT Marshall.
Okay, QT Marshall. No, just to QT Marshall. I'm sure he's a nice guy, but I forgot your name. But Q,
I
but
forget
Q,
like 10 people's name a week on this show. You're fine.
it's a lot of people to keep up with. But like, I remember apparently they were having like a bunch of matches on AEW Dark. They were undefeated on Dark. Then they make their AEW Dynamite debut, and they say, "Oh, we've got a tag team title match next week."
Hmm.
Excuse me, like I didn't even know you were a tag team. I've got questions.
Yeah.
Why are you a tag team? Why is Ali managing you? Like, and it's like if you keep up with all that stuff, then sure, but you've got to keep up with AEW Dark, BTE, AEW Dynamite. That's already 4 hours of TV. You basically got a WWE lineup right there of Raw, SmackDown, and NXT to keep up with. And enough people complain about having to keep up with all those shows, and since they're like branded with their own rosters, you don't necessarily have to keep up with all these shows. But I'm expected to keep up with all of this spin-off AEW stuff just to understand single matches and single segments. It's way too much. They, like you said, they need an actual, I don't know if they need a producer, a TV writer to micromanage things.
I don't even know if micromanage is the way it's done. I think you just need someone with actual backstage television, like wrestling production experience that can come in and say, this is how this is done by the best company in the world at doing this thing. And just because you do something similar to them doesn't make you a bad guy. Like, we're getting to the point where I'm more excited to watch Impact every Tuesday than I am to turn on my TV and see what's going on AEW. You talked to me a year ago before the show started, or even 6 months ago, there's no way that happens. But there's so much homework, and it feels like homework to understand where anything is going. It's so alienating to people who might be jumping in for the first time. You can't walk into a TV show and expect that these people have been following your careers for the last 12 years. Like, you have to give them context for who you are and why you are the way you are.
Exactly. And like
I mean,
one
hell,
thing I can
WWE, so sorry to cut you off, but WWE just laid off like a ton of really talented producers that have been with the company for 20 or 30 years. You have this penchant for bringing in WWE guys, even legendary WWE guys, to run stuff. Bring in a producer who knows what's going on and knows how to make TV wrestling work, and just give him control. It's an
exactly.
easy fix.
Exactly, you hit the nail on the head there. And one thing I will give WWE credit with is, as much as they like to flip flop and just do random things week to week, or just forget certain storylines from the previous week, their TV episodes are at least digestible. Where if I miss, let's say, a month, 2 months of TV, I can dive in and I don't have too many questions. It feels like the perfect, most of the episodes feel like the perfect episode to introduce a new viewer into. Whereas AEW, as much as I love serialized TV, there's a right and wrong way to do it, and they're clearly doing it the wrong way, where you could
Hmm.
watch Dynamite week in, week out, and you still have questions because, like you said, it feels like homework to try to look up these different spin-offs and
Hmm.
internet exclusive stuff. It's too much to keep up with at the end of the day, just to watch one
Yeah,
2 hour show.
yeah, definitely. I think the best way I can put this is the way to make a successful wrestling show, and I promise we'll get off of this one topic, and we've got a little bit left to cover. The way to make a successful wrestling show in 2020 is to take the Law and Order SVU approach. You've got the overarching story. You have those main characters. They're doing something contained, and every once in a while, you've got your Criminal Intent or your AEW Dark who come in and poke their heads in and say, "Hey, we're working on a case, and you can come watch us work on the case over here." But it doesn't affect your story that you're telling. That these guys are doing their thing over here. You've got this whole big world that you reference and you make note to, and that people know it exists, and they can seek it out if they want to, but it's not required for you to understand where things are going on the show that you're tuning in to watch every week.
Perfectly said. Bravo.
Okay, that's enough bitching about the way they produce TV. Let's keep moving. So Thunder Rosa ended up defending her NWA Women Worlds Championship against Ivelisse. NWA has the weirdest naming conventions with their titles, I swear to God. Against Ivelisse. Great match. It got really, really snug around halfway in, and it looked like they were laying into each other. And as it turns out, thanks to Fightful, we found out that's because they were laying into each other. Ivelisse, about halfway through the match, takes a move from Thunder Rosa, doesn't sell it. Thunder Rosa takes offense to that, gives her a receipt. Ivelisse returns with the receipt, and then they just started beating the hell out of each other to the point that the match was, I, to my understanding, Ivelisse did the job in the end and took the pin, and it wasn't a forced pin in the way that like Sting and Jeff Hardy was, where he was just too drunk to want to be pinned, and you can see him struggling underneath him. I believe Ivelisse took the job. If she didn't, we haven't been told that by the powers that be or the reporters that be. But it looked snug, it looked brutal, and it's because it was. If you were going to go back and watch a match from this week, I would suggest this, and I would suggest the next match that we're going to see. They were incredible. This was really, really cool. What do you think?
I think from the sounds of it, just sounds like a really aggressive match. It's wild that it had to get like legitimately aggressive, but
Mm-hmm.
hey, if fans enjoyed it in a way where it's not too noticeable, then hey, more power to them. Hopefully they shook hands at the end of the match, not end of the match, but when they
End
got
of the night.
backstage, end of the
Yeah.
night, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, props to both of the ladies. It looked snug, but it didn't look snug enough that anyone was concerned. Like we all kind of had that thought of, well, maybe something was going on here, but no one really knew until Sean Ross Sapp over at Fightful came out with that report earlier this afternoon saying, yeah, no, it looks snug because it was, and because they were pissed at each other. And Thunder Rosa is not someone that I ever want to piss off, let alone piss off when I'm standing in a ring with her, because she will kill you, and she will do it with a smile on her face. So going into the main event of AEW, we had Proud and Powerful, that tag team that we mentioned that is a member of the Inner Circle, facing off with Best Friends in a parking lot fight. So I don't know if you've seen this movie, but it looked like the last scene from that movie Never Back Down from like 2008, where the white kid learns how to fight MMA and he ends up like getting in an underground UFC tournament back when UFC was just starting. Have you
I,
seen that movie? Do you have any like touchstone for what I'm talking about?
I've never seen it, but I remember when it first came out, I had a lot of MMA friends who would tell me just going crazy about it when we were in high
Mhm.
school.
Okay, so to since you've never seen it, to explain what I'm talking about, they're in the parking lot of the Daily's place, and this is a long-standing feud. You had the Proud and Powerful pouring bleach on their gear, on Best Friend's gear. You had them urinating on their gear at one point as well, and then most recently, they stole Trent's mom's van and vandalized it.
Did this
So
all happen in the
they
same match?
no, 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 no. This is over. This is the course of over the course of months of what
Oh,
happened to lead up to this match.
I'm about
So
to say
this
that's a
happens.
lot.
So Trent, yeah. So Trent and Chuck are over it. They're tired of it. They challenge them to this match, and when you get out to the parking lot, you have a ring of cars with their headlights on, and then like that open area in the center, so you know that they're going to be confined into this area of cars. And when I say they beat the shit out of these guys. They beat the shit out of these guys. Trent comes away the best looking guy of the match because he took everything. He went through a windshield, he went through a back window, he got power bombed onto a car hood, he had a car hood slammed down on his face. Like he walked into that match and said, we want to make y'all look good and y'all want to make us look good. So I'm going to take my licks. I'm going to get the crap kicked out of me, and was just down for it. So Best Friends end up coming away the victors after, I believe it was Trent power bombed Santana just flat out onto the concrete, like busting his head open. There's blood everywhere. It looked incredibly violent. It's the closest to a legitimate death match that I think I've seen on AEW television. There was the match between Darby Allin and Kenny Omega that it was Kenny Omega and John Moxley that had the barbed wire netting. That was pretty violent. This was worse. So if you've seen that match, you have that touchstone for, oh, that made my skin crawl and my stomach turn. This was worse.
That's high praise because that match was just really violent. The
Yeah.
Moxley, I was about to say Allen. Who's the other guy?
Moxley and
Omega,
Omega.
right? Yeah.
And I say this as a guy who loves deathmatch wrestling, who loves the art of bleeding for wrestling and using your body to tell that story. This was hard to watch at times. There were a couple of spots, especially when they slammed that car hood down on him, where AEW, God bless them, held that camera angle. There were no discernible cuts, and you watch that hood come down, and you hear it click. You hear the slam on the back of his body, and there's no way conceivably that he walked away from that and was fine the next day.
It sounds really violent and like really. I can't remember the last time I've seen a match that was that, but probably the Moxley Omega match. But that sounds just really painful.
Yeah, no, it was crazy. It was something that you would expect to see more at like a GCW show than you would expect to see on a TNT programming at like 9 o'clock on a Wednesday night. It was crazy, and it gave me expectations for NXT that they did not live up to. So NXT was a good show. It was a very good show. It was not AEW this week. AEW very distinctly, in my mind, won this week. NXT started off with Shotzi Blackheart and Io Shirai. They had a insane 20-minute plus, like 22-minute match for the women's championship. Shotzi looked really, really strong. She almost beat her a couple of times. Io kind of pulls out that victory by the skin of her teeth, but it immediately catapults Shotzi to like the top of that card and being someone who is going to be in that championship mix for a good bit of time.
Yeah, it sounds like a match I would really want to see. I'm kind of surprised they put it on TV. That on paper, to me at least, that sounds like a takeover match.
So it definitely does sound like a takeover match. The only issue with that is that Shotzi has been kind of a comedy girl since she got there. Like her whole thing is she has the tank and she runs over Robert Stone's foot. But this sort of seemed like her debut as a legitimate grappler, like a legitimate wrestler who can hold her own in the ring with people like Io Shirai, Candice LeRae, Rhea Ripley, Becky Lynch, Charlotte Flair, the people who run those divisions. She's kind of established herself now just in one match as someone who should be taken seriously in that same breath.
That's a good point. And if this was a match that really catapulted her to that next level to show her versatility, basically that she can do comedy but also be a really good serious wrestler, then I'm all for her being in that lineup of just future main eventers in that, not even just NXT, but just WWE as a whole for years to come. She's like character-wise, she's just super talented in the ring. She's super talented as she's shown in like the Indies and Evolve. So like I'm glad for it to begin this push like this. If there was a match that I ever went back to that we talked about today, I would want to go back to that one just because on paper that just sounds so good.
Yeah, no, definitely. Continuing on with NXT, we saw Kushida, who seems to kind of be returning to the Kushida of old recently. Last week, he brutalized Velveteen Dream and just made him look like a rag doll, just throwing him around the ring, beating him down, really kind of bringing that New Japan strong style like belief into WWE. And this week it was Austin Theory's turn. Theory comes out and is cutting a promo on Tommaso Ciampa, who is recently re-debuted. Kushida also comes down, gets Austin Theory in the ring, and in a course of, I believe it was like a 2 or 3 minute match, just decimates the guy, just picks him apart joint by joint, piece by piece, and makes him tap. Made Kushida look really, really strong. Theory doesn't really lose anything because he hasn't been a very focal point, like a very big focal point on NXT TV. You can see that they trust Theory and that they have big plans for him because he was able to come out and cut a promo on the biggest heel in the brand, and then make one of the guys that they want to be one of their top baby faces look strong, and they trusted him to do that and to do it well. So I have big hopes for Theory going forward. What do you say?
The prospect of Kushida, well, you say go back to his roots, but like I've never really seen him as like super serious. Like I've only followed a little bit of his New Japan stuff, and every time I've seen him play up a character, it's always been the silly Back to the Future callback stuff. I've never really
Yeah.
seen him. Yeah, I've never really seen him like play up the serious technical wrestler aspect of him. But from the sounds of it, if he's just gonna just go all out, break people's fingers, break people's arms, that sounds really interesting. It's hard for me to imagine how that looks like because I can facial wise, I can only see him as that smiling baby face. But if he could like bring out that type of aggression, then that could put him on like a whole another level and like as far as like the main event picture goes.
So the way I can explain it best is Kushida's run as ace of the juniors division over in New Japan had him with more in common with like Pete Dunne than Fandango or Breezango.
Mm.
He was, this kind of no nonsense. I mean, as no nonsense as you can be in Japanese wrestling. He still had his gimmick. He still did the time traveler stuff, but once he got in the ring, he was there to make you feel pain. And that is sort of where we're kind of circling back to with him now in NXT. It seems like maybe they learned from the way that they messed up Kenta's run, and Akira Tozawa's run is continually being messed up, and they kind of said what worked in Japan, what made you big is what we're going to let you do here. And so they're just letting him be this incredibly dominant smaller performer who's, I think, going to end up having a run with the title before he either goes back to Japan or ends up on the main roster.
Like the cruiserweight belt or like the actual
No, I
NXT
think
title?
I think he is talented enough and a big enough draw. They'll put the NXT title on him because he's not that much smaller than Adam Cole. Adam Cole maybe has 5 or 10 pounds on him, and they're about the same height. So there's not that level of like, oh, but you're a small guy, you should be a cruiserweight. There is that believability of, well, if Adam Cole could win this title, why can't Kushida? Especially if Johnny Gargano can win this title, why can't Kushida? So he's one of those guys that I hope they put their trust in and let him have that run with that main belt. The only thing that makes me sad is that we don't still have Andrade down in NXT, because Andrade versus Kushida for the NXT title, I think, could blow just about any takeover main event or your favorite takeover match ever. I think those two could put something together that's better than what you're thinking of right now.
Yeah, that would be a great match. Though like NXT like always has a knack for putting their top belt on quote unquote the low guys, so to speak. No disrespect to the low guys, but the low guys. But yeah, like the only reason like it's hard for me to imagine him with the NXT belt is just because I haven't seen that aggressive side of him. Maybe if I did, I could, but it's hard for me to really picture that in my head.
Yeah, I think if you go back when you're bored or if you have some free time, and it's Best of Super Juniors, I think 2016, 2017. It's him and Will Ospreay, at that point considered the two best junior wrestlers in the world, and they just destroy each other for like 35 minutes. And it's a really, really, really well done match. It's really, really impressive, and it shows not only what Will could do that made him like one of the best wrestlers and the best known wrestlers in the world back before he became a heavyweight, but it shows what WWE and the Western audience as a whole saw in Kushida that made them pursue him as hard as they did and bring him over, because his last like a year in New Japan, you could see that he was kind of winding down on his style and trying to protect himself so that he could make the money he was going to make and go over to WWE and have no injury issues. But when he was all New Japan all the time and was considered the best in the best juniors division in the world, some of the stuff he was doing is just mind blowing.
All right, more power to him.
Absolutely. So we had two title defenses on NXT this week. We had Breezango defending their tag titles against Imperium. This was a really good match because you had Imperium kind of coming out and being cocky. You know, they think that Breezango is nothing more than a comedy duo and that they got lucky the last time they faced them and that it's going to be short work to win back their titles and you know, regain their position on the card. Breezango beats them fairly easily, just kind of comes in with seriousness and like a directness and an understanding that they want to keep their titles on them and just runs through them. It was a really well done match. I really like this story of like putting Breezango on a pedestal of being real serious wrestlers who can also do comedy. And it's a nice kind of inverse to the way that WWE handles their tag teams currently, where if you're on main roster, you're a comedy person, but if you're on NXT, you have to be able to wrestle and you have to be believable and you have to be able to handle your own. So it's nice seeing these guys that got their shot because of Fashion Files and being these good comedy guys come in and show, oh no, but the reason I'm signed to a wrestling company is because I can go.
Okay. I'm really glad for both of them, just the fact that they could just revive the wrestling parts of them, especially Fandango. Like, if you look at his old stuff as Johnny Curtis, like he's a better wrestler than I think a lot of people give him credit for being. Like we've all seen Tyler Breeze be great in match with Sami Zayn back when NXT was first getting big.
Jushin Thunder Liger in the first takeover.
Bingo, that was really good too. But like with Fandango, I feel like no one really gave him his time and day as like an in-ring wrestler. But I feel like this new rechristened Breezango with tag titles could really show people, or at least I hope are already showing people just how good they both really are.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's one of those things where I'm so glad that Breezango are in NXT, and I hope against hope that they never leave. Because as much as I loved Fashion Files, as much as I loved the comedy stuff that they were really good at, these guys at the end of the day are incredibly talented wrestlers, and they are so good at doing the wrestle and so good at being these strong, tough guys that just have like a little bit of a silly streak in them and having fun with the fact that they are paid to fight. Like I love the stuff they're doing on NXT right now, and I hope that they're kind of the new iterations of Gargano and Ciampa, and this is just where they're going to stay through the rest of their contracts. So the last match that we had on NXT, and where I kind of have the loss of expectations, and the AEW clearly won. So while we had Best Friends and Proud and Powerful putting on an insane death match style match, we had Damian Priest defending his North American title against Timothy Thatcher. Good match, you know, not great match by any stretch of the imagination, but it was good. You know, it was a catch as catch can, really grapple heavy match. Damian Priest ends up coming up on top and retains his title. It was okay, and you know, it wasn't knockdown, drag out, incredible. I think I would have liked it a lot more if I had watched NXT before AEW, but I watched AEW first this week, so I kind of came into it with like a, well, if this is what these guys were doing, what are these guys doing? And it just, the whole night kind of felt a little deflated, but this match, more so than any of the others, felt really kind of meh.
Yeah, I can definitely see how you could be disappointed there. Just on paper, Thatcher versus Priest just sounds like the lesser of the two. And I say that as just a fan of Thatcher, fan of Priest. They're both really good at doing what they do. But when you pair them together, it just sounds like a really mismatch. I can't imagine that being stellar or memorable.
Yeah, no, like Damian Priest's run in Ring of Honor as the TV champion and Timothy Thatcher's run with MLW late last year is some of my favorite stuff for both of those respective promotions. So you would think these two facing off in a ring would be incredible. It just wasn't, and it might come down to neither of them is very experienced in calling matches in the ring, or it might just be that they just sort of were told to go for 20 minutes and to figure out where things go, and they just might not have the best chemistry. I just personally didn't really love the way the match is executed.
It sounds like a clash of styles because they both got very, very different styles, and I can't imagine. Sometimes opposites attract, but this doesn't sound like one of those cases.
Yeah, it was definitely odd because you had Thatcher trying to keep it grounded and keep it on the mat, and then Damian Priest, who is not as much known for his high flying stuff in NXT as he was in Ring of Honor, but he is very clearly a high flyer if you go back and look at even one of his things in Ring of Honor, just trying to keep the match at a higher pace. It didn't work right. It didn't mesh well. All right. So jumping over to Ring of Honor quickly, they came back this week. And not only did they return to network television for the first time since the pandemic, they brought the Ring of Honor Pure title out of retirement. This title hasn't been seen since 2006 when, geez, Brian Danielson. I always want to call him Daniel Bryan when I'm talking about Ring of Honor. Brian Danielson pinned another Ring of Honor alumni, current WWE signee in, oh goodness, I just lost his name. Uh, NXT UK commentator Nigel McGuinness. There it is. I found it. So he pinned Nigel McGuinness to win the Pure title and combine it with the Ring of Honor World title. So they're bringing back the Pure title and they're starting it off with the tournament. So you have the red and the blue uh, branches. It's very similar to the G1. There's just less matches every night than there are in the G1 over in New Japan. So we had two matches in the tournament on this first episode back. That first match saw Jay Lethal pinning Dalton Castle to go forward. Jay Lethal is the only person currently in the tournament that held the Pure title. He held it in 2005 and lost it to Samoa Joe. Uh, Lethal is incredible. If you don't know who he is by now, you're not going to. He's been a mainstay on the indies since 2003. He had a very brief run on ECW when it got kind of rebranded and revamped by WWE. He was on that brand for, I think, like 6 months before he kind of separated and went back to Impact, where he has probably what he's the most famous for, which is the woo off with Ric Flair. You've got him in his whole suit just screaming woo and starting to bark into the mic. But he's a really talented guy. Dalton Castle is also really talented. I love seeing Dalton Castle actually wrestle and not do his kind of like, I am the best and I am a peacock and I am beautiful kind of gimmick, actually getting in there and wrestling and being dirty with it. We also saw Jonathan Gresham, the Octopus, who is one of my favorites in Ring of Honor, facing off against the debuting Chikara mainstay Wheeler Yuta, who is just an insanely talented technical wrestler. He's had stays in Japan with Sendai, not Sendai Pro, but Dragon Gate. He's had time in the UK. He was trained under Walter in WXW in Germany. The guy has been everywhere. He's really talented. I'm excited to see him kind of cut his teeth in Ring of Honor. He was submitted by Jonathan Gresham. So Jay Lethal and Jonathan Gresham, former Ring of Honor Tag Team Champions, are both actually current Ring of Honor Tag Team Champions, excuse me, are both moving on to their next point in that tournament. And then next week, I believe we'll get the first two matches in the blue bracket.
Okay, that's interesting. And from the sounds of it, it sounds like no, I don't know who the world champion is, so I can't really have a template for this hot take. But it seems like they're making the pure championship like something exclusive for the not even just the technical wrestlers, but like people who wrestle like a legit wrestling style because you got Jay Lethal, Jonathan Gresham, very technical wrestlers. I'm not familiar with Yute Watanabe's style, or I've never seen him wrestle. But Dalton
Not Ute
Castle,
Watanabe, Wheeler, Utah.
Wheeler, Utah. Okay, I don't know how I
Yes.
pulled that name out of a hat there, but yeah, never seen him wrestle. But Dalton Castle, he's got a deceptively amateur wrestling background. So like you see the Peacock character, that kind of throws you off a little bit when you see him wrestle. So like you see these wrestling styles clash. It seems like, again, don't know who the world champion is, but if you look at what the pure championship is, it seems like they're gonna do like a very technical wrestling based championship for like the pure, literally the purest wrestling fans who like that ground and pound style.
hmm So the current world champion is Rush, the leader of Los Ingobernables Internacional. Uh, so he is the current champion. He beat PCO for that title at Gateway to Honor back in February.
Okay, so knowing the type of wrestler Roosh is, definitely seems like now the pure wrestling title is going to be used as that like alternative championship
hmm
for the wrestling fans who just don't really want the character stuff, or the character stuff at least comes second to the mat based wrestling, basically.
hmm It's kind of their answer to like the Universal and WWE championships. It's a separate championship, still on that same show, still on the same brand, but it's a different set of stipulations. And
Hmm.
the way they're doing this tournament is really interesting. You're only allowed 3 rope breaks, and then pins and submissions under the ropes are legal. You can only use a closed fist once and be warned if you use a closed fist twice. It's an automatic disqualification and you're kicked from the tournament. So it's a really interesting set of stipulations for the tournament, and it's a good way to kind of reintroduce themselves to the wrestling public since they've been gone now for almost 9 months. So jumping over to Impact Wrestling, there's really only one thing that happened on Impact that we need to touch on. Rich Swann and Eric Young were announced as being the main event for Bound for Glory, which is their kind of WrestleMania style show. It's their biggest show of the year. Eric Young is the current Impact World Champion. This match will be for that championship. Their feud started at Slammiversary when Eric Young re-debuted and injured Rich Swann, causing him to kayfabe retire and then return last week. So if you remember, we talked about it last week where I didn't know where the story was going, but I hoped he was like for sure healed now and we were going to get a match out of it. Turns
Hmm.
out we are the last Saturday, of October. We're going to get to see these two face off against one another.
Yeah, I was gonna say we talked about it last week, and I remember saying that like if this does happen at the WrestleMania pay per view, then Swan definitely has to win this, give him that very big comeback kid underdog good guy victory to end off on. And I'm still 100% on that train. I'm hoping Swan wins this, and I hope Impact understands that's the best choice to make in this scenario.
Yeah, and I definitely think that Eric Young is comfortable with his role as a transition champion at this point. Like he's 41, 42 years old. He's a TNA original. He's done everything there is to do in Impact at this point. I think he just wanted to come home to kind of wind down his career. So being that transition champion and taking it from Eddie Edwards, a previous world champion, to bring in this new generation of stars with Rich Swann, I think is something that he uh, is going to be okay with and comfortable with. So jumping to things that went on outside of the ring, we've got 2 main things that went on. Lince Dorado posted an Instagram post earlier today with his back to the camera and his mask off and on his fist saying, I think the quotation was changes are coming or something new. Let me double check that real fast. But it looks like they're setting him up to unmask and kind of separate himself from the Lucha House Party. He was a member of the tag team that ended up winning over the SmackDown champions on Friday just a week ago. So we'll see where that story is going, but it's definitely interesting.
Does WWE just hate like mass wrestlers. Like if Lindsay Dorado,
100%.
I was gonna say yeah, because we just had unmasking like whenever that was with the cruiserweight.
Phantasma,
Yes,
yeah,
Phantasma, and
and
he
all of those
unmasked.
guys in the Phantasma's faction ended up unmasking. So you had like what ends up being like 7 unmaskings, or not 7. There's like 3 guys in that faction, but still, you had more than you would necessarily want.
Right, and with Phantasma, like he unmasked like as soon as he got the belt, basically. So they didn't even try to like see if they could work a mass championship thing with him. So, but like, hey, if it leads for a push for Lindsay Dorado, then more power to him.
Yeah, absolutely. If it's something that he wants to do, he's comfortable doing, and it ends up with him getting maybe a push with the Phantasma's faction, or even a solo push on SmackDown, then good for him. I hate it. I don't want to see luchadors unmasked without any kind of pomp and circumstance. Like, it is such an important part of their identity and such an important
Mm.
part of their culture. I want them to have that moment of like, I lost a hard fought match, I have to unmask, I have to do this. I don't love this whole we hate where we come from, we think it holds us down, so we're losing the mask thing that WWE seems to try to be pushing right now. But that's just me. I
Plus, it
wasn't
seems
able.
like
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say it seems like too much of an easy out where they don't know how to book in a mass wrestler because for whatever reason, their mass wrestlers are completely silent for whatever reason.
Mhm.
And like when they don't know how to book a mass wrestler, they just unmask. They're like, "Oh, we're not even gonna try to work our way around this. We're just gonna unmask and make them a whole new character into our image." It's lazy booking.
No, absolutely. So the caption on his Instagram post with the mask is just goodbye. Just one word, goodbye. A lot of people were initially speculating that that meant he was leaving the Lindsay character behind and leaving WWE. There's been no confirmation of that. So right now, the safe assumption is that he is going to end up unmasking and kind of doing his own thing. So back outside the ring, we got word from Fightful Select yesterday that Deonna Purrazzo, EC3, and Alex Shelley were all officially offered contracts with the company. What makes this interesting is that Deonna Purrazzo and Alex Shelley are 2 champions with the company right now, who were apparently working on a paid per appearance kind of schedule. Um, and another interesting thing is that Alex Shelley's tag partner, who he shares the belts with, was not mentioned in that report. Now, whether that means that he has not been offered a contract, or he was already under contract and Shelley was holding out for more money or something different, is unclear. But yeah, Deonna Purrazzo, EC3, and Alex Shelley are getting the big money, apparently, so good for them.
It's weird to me that they're putting belts on people and making big storylines out of people that technically aren't signed there. It seems
Yeah.
to me they're doing just handshake deals, like because like EC3 had a big thing from what I understand. Like I know like the build up was definitely a big thing, so I'm assuming that they're making a big deal out of him being there, and he's got his own
Mhm.
storyline already.
So he's working with Moose right now, and the
Okay.
EC3 thing gets even more interesting when you realize and remember that a couple of weeks ago there were rumors going around that he was actually going to be debuting with Ring of Honor in this pure tournament.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
So he was, the last I had heard about it, he was at the tapings for the pure tournament. He was in matches on the pure tournament, and then nothing ever came of it. He wasn't mentioned in any of the brackets, and now he's being announced as being offered a contract by Impact Wrestling. So it's really, really interesting.
Yeah, it's very. I don't know. It's kind of corny to me, just to just per appearance or handshake deals. I don't think it's smart to put so much stock into people if you're not 100% sure that they're gonna be there. It's like it reminds me of the whole AJ Styles thing where they basically ripped off the whole CM Punk angle that WWE did with the whole "I'm gonna leave the company and take the tower with me." only AJ Styles literally took the towel and left because he had re-signed the day he won at Bound for Glory and
Hmm.
just dipped and then came back for one match, dipped again and went to WWE. It's I don't like crony situations like that. It just screams bad business to me.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. It's interesting. I don't want to believe the worst in Impact because they have been
Hmm.
making such a positive change
Hmm.
backstage and in that front office over the last year and a half, minus the part where they paid and gave Joey Ryan a platform, but we don't talk about that. Uh, so, they've been doing more good than they've been screwing up recently. Hopefully they continue doing well, but this really screams to me like they're kind of backsliding into their old ways. And it worries me because I genuinely enjoy Impact every week and I want them to succeed and I want them to be in a position to be a legitimate, if not contender with AEW and WWE, at least someone to give Ring of Honor a run for their money and not let them be so comfortable in that third spot.
Yeah, like that's what makes it all the more disappointing to me because the fact that they've been making active steps for change in the last 2 years. They've had a couple fumbles here and there, but they've really changed their front office, changed who they're pushing, and it seems like they're really making, like you said, positive change. But when you see stuff like this with the contracts, it's very much like shades of old, and I hope they don't go back too deep into the old ways. And this is just another fumble that they can just get past and hopefully not repeat.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And we'll be keeping a close eye on it going forward. And if they do start to screw up, I will be very fast to bring it up here. So moving on, we're going to get into my indie watch list. This is where I bring you an indie show I watched in the last week. I tell you what it is, where you can get it, how much it is, and why you should watch it. This week, we're going to go with United Wrestling Network's Primetime Live Episode 1. So this is the NWA, Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, Championship Wrestling from Arizona, Championship Wrestling from Memphis, and Thunder Rosa's promotion down in Austin. They're all kind of running together and doing these co-branded events, these weekly pay-per-views until they're able to start running their own shows on, and doing their own things again. The first episode aired on Thursday night. It's $8 on Fight TV, or you can buy the first 4 episodes all as a pack for $24.99. It was a really, really good show. A lot of really talented indie guys from all across the southern United States. We had a NWA 10 pounds of gold defense between Nick Aldis and Mike Bennett, formerly of the WWE. This is his first return to a wrestling ring since he was released. His wife was there with him. It was a really, really well done match, really good show, and a really short show as far as indie wrestling is concerned. It was a total runtime of 93 minutes, and about 88 minutes of that was actual wrestling. There was a bit at the end where you had your backstage interviews and just vamping and thanking people. It was really good. I think it's definitely worth that $8.
Okay, cool. Good stuff. And I guess that dives right into my segment of is wrestling good enough to watch right now? No. I
Well, that was quick and decisive.
yeah, cuz like just based on everything you told me, it just sounds either really boring or not very memorable. There's only like two things I even remember that sounds at least kind of good or kind of interesting that I kind of wanted to go back and watch. It's really just the Hurt Business Retribution segments and the Io Shirai, Shotzi Blackheart stuff. But other than that, it either just sounds really boring or just really bad. So wrestling's kind of in the gutter, I guess.
So
Uh,
take this week off. Just listen to the podcast. You're gonna get everything you need in a lot less time. Trust me, the 2 hours and it'll end up being 2 hours and 15 minutes you're gonna spend listening to this is so much less time than I spent watching it for you this week. Just hang out with us, you'll be fine.
100%. And I thank you for putting in all that time so I don't have to.
Oh, dude, I would do it anyway. I'm at the point now where instead of smoking cigarettes and drinking too much, I watch a lot of wrestling.
Might be worse.
It's definitely a bigger toll on my mental health than smoking a cigarette ever was. I don't know if it's worse for my overall health at this point, though. I think we're about even there. We'll see how it goes in the next couple of weeks, especially when we start getting to Impact, Ring of Honor, and MLW all running pay-per-views, as well as AEW and WWE again. I might die. I'm not gonna lie to you. I might die, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
We'll see.
Alrighty. Well, thank you all so much for tuning in to our show. You can follow me on Twitter at Gladen, Sam. You want to spell out that comma, so it's Gladen, COMMA, Sam. And read my coverage of all things pro wrestling at dailyddt.com.
And if you like disappointment, you can follow me at Wham Bam It's Jam on every platform. Check out my Patreon. Check out my Ko-fi. Just throw some money my way. I ain't too proud to beg. Just throw money at me so I'm not poor. What else? Oh yeah, Mental Health Check-In podcast. Check out that on all the platforms. It's very much a sister podcast to this podcast. And Sam was actually on the most recent episode, so you're gonna want to hear that one.
And you should hit up his Patreon. Speaking of not being too proud to beg for money, that's patreon.com/Wham Bam It's Jam. He's writing essays, producing exclusive audio content. He's a good guy, and it's a good follow. Give it your money. You're not going to use it for anything anyway.
Thank you.
Yes. So don't forget to subscribe to the show on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a rating and a review. It really helps us out. As of this week, we are officially on Apple Podcasts. You can go back, subscribe there, get all the episodes, listen to them, give us 5 stars. They don't have to know if you actually listen to them. Just mute it, let it play. Just give us the runtime, guys. That's all we're asking for. You can follow. I think I said the thing about following the show on Twitter. If not, you can follow the show on Twitter at LapsGraps. That's LAPSEDGRAPS. And until next time, we out.